Welcome Francisco and Carlos on stage with their talk about CIF, the modern way on integrating commerce solutions into the Adobe Experience Cloud. Welcome, Carlos and Francisco.
Thanks. Okay, thanks. So we already announced. So I'm Carlos, and Francisco is my colleague. We are software developers at Diconium, and we are from the Diconium Lisbon office. And we are here to present you the work we have been developing on how to connect SAP CX Commerce, and it was previously known, or you might know it better as Hybris, to Adobe Experience Cloud. And we developed basically a connector running on top of Adobe I Runtime. And we want to show you how we did it and why we did it. Yep. So Diconium, I think we are the first ones not from Provision or Adobe. So it's a company born in 1995, and it's present all around the world right now, and we have around 900 employees. Okay, so to get to what really matters. So basically, what we want to show you, it's a way to deliver a common API across the complete Experience Cloud. So Adobe provides a complete suite of products, including AEM, Adobe Campaign, other things inside the Experience Cloud. And until now, there was no way to expose a commerce API in the same way to all of them. So what Adobe started was the CIF, which stands for Commerce Integration Framework, which is an open source API, so you can just look for it on GitHub, and there will be a publicly available Swagger, and then we can connect it to different commerce providers. So basically, what we are working on, so we can have several different backends here, and for instance, Hybris, and then on top of the Adobe I Runtime, we can have different connectors to the different backends, and on this case, we developed the one to connect to Hybris, or SAP CX Commerce. Okay, so as I was saying, so the CIF REST API, it's the art of all programmatic interactions with Adobe's commerce. So basically, we want everything to pass through here in a standard way and in an extendable way. And basically, we want it to be easy to extend. So we have an out-of-the-box couple of features, but probably some specific requirements will show on. And we want to be able to easily adapt to those and extend it to respond to those new requirements. And what can we do with it? So we can do the complete commerce standard thing. So we can see a product, we can see a list of products, we can filter them, we can add them to the cart, we can post orders, we can do login, we can register users, so everything you need to do basically on an online shop. So, and this, as I was mentioning, it's going to be running on top of Adobe I Runtime, which is a serverless platform. It was already mentioned, I think, on the first talk, something about OpenWhisk. So the Adobe I Runtime, it's on top of, it's an extension or a fork, more or less, of the Apache OpenWhisk. And in the end, it's going to work based on microservices, and it's going to auto-scale. So in theory, we can have an infinite number of resources. So of course, it's theoretical, because there's always a limitation on the hardware that it's running on. But in the end, this should never be a bottleneck. So because you might be asking yourselves right now, so why do you want that and not accessing the Hybris directly? That might cause some problems. It's not, so we are ready tried that, we looked into it, so it's never going to be a performance issue using this CIF API on top of Adobe I/O Runtime. And right now it's available on both, on 2 clusters, right? One on the US and one on Europe, to reduce latency for the shops that are running on both sides of the world. Okay, so right now the development on top of the I/O Runtime, it's only possible with Node.js. Although OpenWhisk allows some other languages, for example Java, for now it's not available on the Adobe instantiation of the OpenWhisk, but it will be somewhere in time. And another advantages of using these, it's the developers are really focused on doing code and not looking into the infrastructure itself. So we can just develop our code, that's the things we like to do, and then put it somewhere running, and it's hopefully, or it's going to work, and without any concerns on memory or CPU or whatever, because it's handled by the platform itself. Some things that, so I placed here no local environment, so we can of course have a local OpenWhisk, but then we maybe lose a little bit of what we were just saying, then we need to worry about it on our local machines. But we don't really need it, especially if we have a lot of unit tests. So our project that we developed, it's close to 100% coverage on unit tests. So if you do that, and it's pretty easy to do those, and you don't really need to, you can just test it when you deploy it to one of the packages on the runtime itself. Then for that, you will need a good CI process to be able to run the tests on every push and to make it deployed as soon as possible. So I will pass it to Francisco to show you a quick demo.
Now it's my time. I'm the demo boy, so I'm coming here to show you a little bit what you can do in this particular demo with the how you can work with Adobe I/O. Okay, so just to get an idea, how many of you have already played with, use Adobe I/O Runtime? Okay, one. So okay, you don't count. Okay, cool. So Adobe I/O Runtime is, like we said, based on OpenWhisk. So the first thing you need is the OpenWhisk CLI. So okay, cool. So the OpenWhisk CLI gives us all the interactions that you can get and how you deploy the codes, or how you check if the packages, what are the packages, check if everything is okay. So for now, we have it set up for our instance. So we have more or less, so Whisk, names, base, list. So we have our own namespace at Diconium. So Adobe gave us a namespace for mostly to test with it. And since we were developing the connector to use it. And the way that we can deploy code, it's also very simple and very declarative. So I currently have a file here. So I've already created a small file here. So I need to bring everything to this side. Okay, so it doesn't say much. So it's just a simple function that returns a message. So let's try to add a message here. Maybe let's go to presentation mode. Okay, so let's try to write hello from adaptTo 2019. Okay, cool. This not much, right? Not a big function. So now let's deploy it. Whisk action create. So as you can imagine, this will create an action. An action is basically the single small piece of code. Okay, let me just. Okay, the smallest piece of code that you can deploy to a serverless instance in a way. So let's create the hello start hello adapt adaptTo. Okay, and let's say that it comes from adaptTo.js. Okay. Okay, we created it. And now that we created it, now we can invoke it. So let's whisk action invoke -r or -- result so that we understand better what it is. And now let's call it here. Okay. And here it is. Okay. This was very simple and very unuseful. Okay. Because whoever does write plain JavaScript these days. So this is just a demo. For a better idea of what we can do, we can also deploy bundled code. So we also have here, so we also have in the same place, we have some, okay, it's a simple, it's again a simple code. What we're going to try to do is to justify some lines that we're going to input. And to do so, we will use WebPath. It's already installed, so don't worry, it will be there. And let me just paste some code that I already have prepared. Okay. And this is it. Okay, what we will do is, okay, we will check the args, and for the args, we'll check for the lines. And then for each line, we'll map it, WebPath it with dots, and let's see what happens. So now that I have it, I can build it. Okay. Okay, I built it, and now I can, instead of deploying a normal simple JavaScript file, I can do the same that I did here. But instead of creating the adaptTo, I can say hello. I can say it's the justify adaptTo, and it's not anymore this JavaScript file. It's now something like the bundled action, okay? And now, okay, cool. Now to invoke it, we need to do the same thing. Let's again invoke it. Okay, but now instead of invoking the previous one, let's invoke the new one. But now we said that we wanted parameters, right? So let's give it a param, and it was lines. And now from here on, it's JSON in the end. I think I have it somewhere here. So where is, okay, it's here. Okay, I think it should work, and there it is. So we created a bundled code that will result using input parameters that you can pass to OpenWhisk. So that's it for now, and I'll pass back to Carlos.
Okay, so pretty cool, right? So what can we do with it apart from just justifying code or justifying some JSON lines? So as we were mentioning, so we want to connect the Adobe Experience Cloud with the SAP CX Commerce or Hybris, which it's a commerce engine and that already provides us a REST interface out of the box. And it will have, as I was mentioning before, several entities like categories, products, carts, orders, users, or whatever we need for our commerce shop or for our online shop. So we wanted to build a middleware that would allow us to expose a different API than the one that Hybris has to the Adobe Experience Cloud in a seamless way. So for that, we created a couple of things using a couple of really hot tools, let's call it like that. So our code or our connector, it's available on GitHub. We developed it with TypeScript. We are using Lerna because, so as we were saying here, there's different entities. So we splitted our code base in different projects, and we keep them in a monorepo. So we use Lerna to manage that. So each one of the entities has its own project. Then we use Yarn Webpack and the serverless framework to deploy. So you saw Francisco deploying the actions using the OpenWhisk CLI tool, but when we have a bigger thing or a bigger project, the serverless framework helps a lot on deploying it like that. And then we use Mocha and Kai for our unit tests, and we deploy everything using Circle CI. Okay, so we are doing it not just for fun. We are really using it on real projects. So our first real project using this middleware, it's close to production phase. And so, as I was saying before, we have a standard implementation, and then we had to extend it for this particular project. So the one that's open source, it's the standard one based on Adobe guidelines or Adobe API definition. And then we extended it, and we found it really easy to extend it and really fast to develop on top of it. And we probably have a second project coming that will also use our middleware pretty soon. So Francisco showed you what's an action, and he showed you a pretty basic action, but we want more complex things. So we have each one of our endpoints, it's in fact a sequence of different actions. So where the first one that's going to be called, it's going to be the validation action. So basically it's going to check for valid parameters like mandatory parameters and other kinds of validations, like, I don't know, a number that can't be higher than X, things like that. Then we are going to have the real service call. This is the part of our code that's going to connect to Hybris itself and going to call the Hybris endpoints. And then finally, so you saw here on Francisco demo that we were returning a JSON, but we want to return a web response. So we want to return something valid for the browser to interpret. So in the end, we transform our final response in a valid HTTP response that we can consume via a REST API. So this is how we declare a sequence on our serverless file. So basically, we are saying, OK, I want to have something called getProductById, and that it's going to be a sequence of a validation of the arguments, then the real service itself that's going to have our logic, and then transforming it into a valid HTTP response. And then we can, so the way we have to make a function, or in this case, I'm showing you the service call here. So basically, we have something that we abstracted called a simple action that will receive a mapper and a client. So this mapper it's a TypeScript class in the end that needs to have a method called mapToEntity that it's going to receive the Hybris response of the client call, and it's going to map it on a CIF entity. So in the end, it's a middleware mapper. And then we have the client itself that's going to do the call to the Hybris itself. Then we simply, so we have an error type just for logging. We can not take that much attention into this one. And I forgot to tell you something. So the client just needs to have an exact method. So that exact method, it's going to call Hybris, and in the end, it's going to put the response from Hybris inside of the mapper, and then deactivate. It's going to map it. It's going to get our JSON, and as you were seeing, so it will create our JSON, and then it's going to send it as the input for the next action, which is the web action transformer. And then in the end, this one is going to give us the valid HTTP response for our components to consume. So we can show you.
OK, so back. And now what we'll show you is how we can easily instantiate a version of the CIF Hybris. So I have here another demo. So there's something called customer deployment. It's inside our open source repository. And it's basically what you deploy when you are using it for a site, for a production, for a client. The rest of the code that's inside the rest of the code that's inside the repo, it's basically the code that's installed on. So it's basically the code that's installed on a public namespace, and we just then the customer just binds to that namespace. So the customer just says, "Okay, I want to run the code that you did, but with different parameters," and that's exactly what we will do. So to do the deployment, so we'll just arrive here, and okay, I'll say I have these options. I created some options to connect to a specific Hybris instance, and I'll just say, okay, I want to deploy this on the namespace of diconium. I want to call it, okay, let's call it adaptTo 2019 live, because I've already deployed the not live version to dry run. And then we would say that, okay, we want to bind the Hybris CIF catalog. This is the open source, but inside Adobe I Runtime package. So this always exists, and if you bind to this, it will run code. And so we just deploy. This is a slimmed down version, just so that it doesn't take that much time then to install the full version. Basically, this will install just the cards and categories and the products and categories operations. So we can, for example, get the product by ID now. I think I have it this side. Okay, so it was adaptTo 19. Now let's call it adaptTo 19 live, and there it is. So this is the result from the search endpoint from Hybris, from the OCC. We just pass it through a mapper to assert to the same interface that CIF wants, and it just results in this. Like Carlos showed, you just to extend it. We can also extend it. To extend, we can just deploy a new action, a simple new action, and then on the customer deployment, we just replace it with something different. For example, let's say that in the product, okay, I don't want this because I know that I already deployed something inside. So /diconium, or that I will deploy. adaptTo 2019 live, okay. And I'll create a new get product service. So, and what will this do? So we'll have, like Carlos said, we have the action itself, but we'll overlay the mapper. And the mapper will do something like, okay, I'll extend the core mapper, and I'll call it the super. But then I want to do something like, okay, product.name will be equal to product.name to uppercase. Is it right? I think so. Okay. Okay, we did this. Now what we need to do, we need to build it. So let's go here. So we build it. This is based mostly on TypeScript because we said, okay, since we want a specific interface, let's use a typed language. And it only is JavaScript there, so we had to go for TypeScript. So let's run the script. It will build a new, file. So the file will be in here. So there will be actions and so on. And now I'll deploy the new action. Okay, so the new action should be here. So it's this action. It was the name that I gave it. So, okay, I did not put the live. It was somewhere around here. So I forgot the live, but it's okay. I can change it on the other side. Okay, so now we want to go back to the customer deployment definition. And we just paste it here. It needs to start with diconium / Okay, seems correct. And now let's deploy this one again. So what this will do is to change one of the steps of the sequence. So yes, it has the validation, but now we are saying, okay, not the same mapper. Everything else is the same, but let's swap this piece of the puzzle. And now let's see. Okay, so now let me get products from here, because I to get an ID. So, cool. And now here. And it didn't work. Live demos, right? So let me check. I don't call the extended one. Where? In here? This one is correct. But let me see in here. So, yeah, customer deployment. It's kind of hard to see from here. It should be correct, right? And it deployed correctly, so maybe it's the code.
It's, yeah.
See, of course. So, cool. Not cool, but it happens. So let's build again. Okay, now since we are pointing to the same action again, we don't need to deploy the new one. So just the new code. So let's run the script. Aha, no, again. I changed on the search. Okay, maybe you got the idea. It's for one, I cannot really see where I'm putting, but this is the plan that when you want to extend an action, you can always extend the existing mappings, or you can create new actions to put in between the sequences, and in the end, it will generate a new result for what you want. So, Carlos, back at you.
How do you put it there? No. Okay. Cool. So, in the end, what do we want to achieve with building something like that? So, imagine that we are building a new project, a new AEM project, and we always want to try to get faster to the market, right? So we want to start a project and be as fast as possible to the final client. So in the end, we want to be able to reuse pre-built front-end components. So for example, we can have a product list component that we are going to show you later. And then we can use that same component everywhere because our API calls always responds in the same way. So it's a standard one. Then we can have, like that, we can use out-of-the-box product catalog configurations. So we can keep the out-of-the-box Hybris things and leave them there. Less development times, focus on the end-user experience. So we can use the same components, but then we can just change the presentation layer, for example. So for different clients, different presentation, but the same logic in the background. And it's going to work with both two things. So the MPA, I don't know if it's a common term for everybody. It stands for Mixed Page Applications. So in the end, it's going to mix standard HTML components with React components or with web components and custom elements that we are going to explain a little bit later, and the new SPA editor, so that can use the same React components or the same Angular components, or in the end the same front-end components that the MPA. So we have one more demo to show you how it integrates inside the AEM.
Okay, let's see if I don't fail it again. Okay, so first, just okay, it works, okay? I just was calling the different endpoint. This is the problem of copy-paste. Okay, So to show the product picker, so let's go again to this side. So the product picker is also something that Adobe gave us.
The first thing you have to do is to select what's the service that actually you're going to point to. So let's go to the OSGI configs, and you can see that there's an OSGI factory for the CIF configuration connector. So let's create a new one. Cool, let's call it adaptTo, and let's put the correct endpoint. So it should be, okay, this one. This endpoint was previously configured, and because it has a specific set of configurations that I was not able to do live, it has the API gateway, so that's needed for the pig to function. Okay, now that we created the configuration, we can now go to the product. So this is the commerce, the normal commerce AEM part. So we can go to commerce products. And we can now we'll do something that they call the bind product. So it will work like you'll say what's the service that you want to consume, and this will generate sort of a virtual catalog where you can create and select the products that are already in Hybris. So let's bind the products. In here, let's put a name to it, to electronics, and let's select the commerce provider. It's called commerce, and now it's the adaptTo project. Okay, and let's say that we want it in English. If you have multi-language configured for Hybris, it will also support it, so you can get the different descriptions and the different names for every language. So let's create the binding. Okay, now we have it here. So now let's start drilling down. Okay, cool. These are the main categories that we have. So we can find configurations, open catalog, colors, brands. Let's go to brands. This is a little bit slow, so that's why there's several configurations for cache. It's particularly slow because it needs to go through all of the categories and fetch one by one to see what are the ones that are inside it. So this, again, it's the result. And let's see if we can find the product inside HP. Yeah, there it is, a camera. This can also be used as a widget for dialogues. So in here, we can go to edit mode, and we can select it here. Okay, this is the select the product picker widget. It's more or less like a path selector. You can go here, and it will automatically go to the commerce. Let's go to adaptTo, electronics. Let's try to go to the same ones. So brands, HP, and here it is. When you select this, it will retrieve you the ID of the component of the product, and this will enable you to just select the product without having to know the ID by head. You can also search by the product. You can search for Canon, for example. Again, it takes a bit because of the slow network, and here it is, all the products that retrieve with the Canon. With the Canon label. It depends on what it is. This comes from the search from Hybris, so it might be the brand or any other thing. We can also select in the same way, and then again we get a different ID. And so for this product, let's try to see what it is. Okay, now let's check the information of this product. Okay, so here it is. It was a Canon adapter, a kit for 50D, something like that. Okay, and that's it for this demo.
Okay. So how can we develop then the front-end components for it? So we can use some modern presentation tools. So we can pick up some, I think, for now, only these two are available from Adobe side. I think they are working maybe for Vue.js as well. and then we can use web components to make them work inside HTML components. So what we can do, so we have a standard AEM component built with HTML, and then somewhere in the middle we will see something, our custom element that we called product picker component. And then we will do something like this. So there's this data slide attribute property here, and then we will say, okay, we can give then any name here. We decided data product ID. It sounded like a good name since we are passing a product ID, and then we can pick it up from the property. So we have a dialog that would work with the product picker that Francisco was going to show you, and then we are going to put it inside our custom element, and in the end it's going to be received inside in here. So we have this. So this part of the code, it's built with the Adobe React Web Components library. Okay, and then we have this annotation by attribute value, and then we say data product ID, it's going to be inside product ID. So, and this data product ID, it's the same value that we placed here on that side. So the annotation at by product val, it's going to read everything that we have on data slide attribute. So we can pass different properties inside of it. Then what we do is, okay, we have React component that we called product picker component, and we pass it the product model, and everything that's inside of this model is going to be passed as props for our React component. Okay, so you can see it here. So we have here the product ID being passed as props, and then what we do is we have a custom hook that we called use product get, and inside of it we are going to call our CIF API. And then in the end, we can return any HTML or any rendering that we want to show in our web shop. Okay, so we can show you some of these, and hopefully it's going to work.
Probably not. Okay, so just for experience. Okay, let me bring this one again back here.
Okay.
So how do we usually start with and how do we usually develop using this pattern? So for that, we have demo 3. So we have a normal AEM project created with the Gradle, the Gradle plugin. It's pretty standard. What the single thing we'll deploy with it, it's a single component. And let me just try to do something, because otherwise I cannot read. Okay. Not this one. So, and the only component that we're going to deploy is going to be called a product information component. That, like we now explained, it composes mostly of a web component that will wrap a React component, and it will be called inside HTML. So to get the first idea, so the HTML will look like this. So it will wrap the product information is the web component that will wrap a product information component that I'm going to do, or that it's more or less done. And then it will be able to pass the data slide attribute, which is called data ID, and just pass it the product properties, the ID. So to show more or less what this means, it's okay, everything is expired. This one. So inside the storybook, what we have, it's a simple component. It just shows adaptTo. This is the component that we have inside here. So once we change it, adaptTo, okay, 2019. What we expect is for this one to reload, okay, and it loads. This is a way to fasten up your development on the front end. You can create single isolated components in Storybook, and then just wrap them with the web component and install them inside AEM. So to create a component, it's like this. So, but it's not very useful because we said that we would pass an ID. So let's try to, okay, And we can show like the ID here. So, okay, and I pass this ID. Wrong templating language. Okay, and we can pass this ID, and it will receive a prop from the story, and it will pass. The plan is to pass, okay, this is cool, but the plan is to pass it from props from the dialog. So what we do, it's now instead of the component, we have the web component. And on the web component, we describe the model, saying, okay, it will receive a data attribute called ID, and pass it called as an ID prop inside the React component. This is useful. The main goal of this is to be able to change attributes. So the web component gives us an HTML interface that can re-render the React component after it changes just the HTML. And then this gives us a refresh of the component just by changing the dialog. By doing this, we just install we just declare how it is. We say that, okay, define the custom element, and whenever you find the product information, just do it. Just render it. Okay, so not this one. Okay, the component, it's basically this one. It had the product picker that I was trying to show you back, but it's maybe no, okay. And it would just show you the ID. Maybe I have an ID here because I used one back there. So let's put this one. Okay, and it's still adaptTo because I did not install it. Once I build it, okay, I'll come here and open in terminal. Okay, cool. So now I have also this in here. Okay. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to install it using Gradle, and hopefully the ID that I just added in the product picker will show in the component. In the same way that it shows inside the storybook. Of course not. Just inspect, refresh without cache. This will make a normal web component, so you can see that it will be mounted. So if you find for the web component, it will be mounted. So here it is. It was just a cache problem. If you look at it, you'll see. Let's look at it in publish. If you look at it, you'll see that it's exactly the same as being mounted inside the component, the normal React thing, except that it has a div around it, but that's just the way that the Adobe React web component library allows you to just mount it inside, or over the web component, inside the container, or as a shadow DOM, just so that you can isolate or not better. Just to get also a better idea, this is something that we mounted also. So inside this, it's a set of components that we created to run against Adobe I/O runtime, and it connects with retail. We can see this is completely mounted also using this one. So this is completely mounted using the web components and using the web components and the Adobe I/O platform. So we get real products from Hybris in here. If we inspect, we can see the web component here, we can see a lot of data passed. It's like the URL endpoints, because all of this is front-end. So it's URL endpoint that you need to call. It will then render the list of products, and we can just click to it and just navigate through the product detail page in a way, and add to the cart. And all of this is based on top of both web components, React, and Adobe I/O runtime.
It's on the network tab.
Yeah. So here it is, for example. So this is the post to adding to the cart, and it's based on the We Retail I/O, the one that I was firstly trying to connect, but sadly it didn't work for the product picker. But this is it for the components that we created as a starter up for other projects. So I guess just to finish up.
Yeah, so what are our next steps? So we already created the project on GitHub to open source some of the things that we have seen here and working hopefully and some other things. So Adobe is also moving because of the Magento acquisition, the CIF to support GraphQL as well, and that's something that we might want to support as well on our Hybris connector. So that's the next steps over here. So if you have some questions, I don't know if we still have some time or not, but.
Okay, so this is Nick, and yeah, I have a question. I've been also, messing around with this in a previous project, and I found it really bleeding edge at the time. How far away from production ready would you say this is? I mean, personally, I found it really cool, a really nice concept, but I'm guessing myself it still needs a lot of trials before it's really.
So as I was mentioning in one of the slides, we have one real project, and that's pretty close to
go live.
To go live.
And everything it's using the Adobe I/O. So every integration through Hybris uses Adobe I/O, and until now, through the load tests and through everything, everything seems okay.
Okay, I'm very curious. So, yeah.
Yep.
Good luck.
That's one question, yeah.
Does it also support the promotion engine of Hybris at the moment?
No. For now, we only have the integration with the categories, orders, carts, products themselves, and the users. I think that's it.
The CIF interface, it's a specified one, so we tried, at least at the core, we tried to only keep to those endpoints in the end, so nothing is there for that, so no.
But on the project that we were mentioning, we already have some custom things, and as we were saying, it's pretty easy to extend, and it's open source as well, so if you want, we can.
Any further questions? Okay, then thank you, Francisco and Sophia.